Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talks. Today we have Seth Casden with us. He's founder and CEO at Hologenix. They have a flagship product called CELLIANT, which is a textile, a responsive textile that uses infrared technology that is clinically proven to increase tissue oxygen levels. A great product. In short, I'm using one of the T-shirts, and I see that you are wearing one of the T-shirts as well. I know that Under Armour is one of your clients because those are the T-shirts that I'm wearing with the CELLIANT logo. But please tell the people what you do without going too complicated and where they might know you from.
Thank you, of course. So, as you said, I'm Seth Casden, the co-founder and CEO of Hologenix, and we make CELLIANT, which is a bioresponsive textile. I'm not sure that, unless you've heard of CELLIANT, you would know me from anywhere, but ostensibly, my passion and what I've been doing the last 20 years is the pursuit of harnessing human energy and creating a health benefit for the user back into the body through infrared.
So your brand, and I would say a textile, is one of the first that I've seen that actually works. Can you explain a little bit about the technology? What is it? How is it different?
Absolutely. So the way that I like to explain it is we really haven't invented anything new. We've just connected the dots of existing science in ways that perhaps were overlooked previously. So the body is really an energy source. We're giving off 100 watts of energy just sitting here talking. If we could plug a light bulb into our head, it would be on 24/7. So that's potential energy. That's energy that can be harnessed. And what we've done is we've taken infrared emitting ceramic minerals that you would find in an infrared sauna, for instance, and we've ground them down to less than a micron in size. A human hair is about 100 microns wide, to give you a frame of reference. And most polymers, most fabrics start out as liquid. So polyester, nylon, even viscose start in a liquid form. And we add the minerals in at that stage. And once the yarn is extruded and knit into fabric and made into garments or bedding, it absorbs the body's heat, it's activated by the body's heat, and those minerals are charged and then emit infrared back into the body, which triggers these physiological benefits.
So I found the whole concept of what you're describing, because it started getting really cold during winter at night when I was sleeping. And obviously pajamas aren't the best experience. And so I started looking this concept up, and then I think we got connected, and it was out of nowhere, you guys literally create these T-shirts that have this infrared technology and actually keeps me warm at night. You said that the company obviously is it's almost 20 years old, or 19 I saw on LinkedIn, but how are you guys unique? Is how is this not super popular and everywhere?
We get that question a lot, and it's a great question. And if I had the answer, I'm sure we'd be farther along in consumer adoption. I think really the challenge is that people don't believe something can be that simple, and we're naturally skeptics at nature. And so here we are coming along saying that you can just put a different set of clothes on, sleep in a different set of linens, and you're actually going to improve your body's health and function and well-being. And I think that's something that really requires a lot of validation and science behind it. We now have 9 published studies, and I think we're starting to get to the point where even a healthy skeptic will see the value and the benefits of infrared. And I think certainly in 10 or 20 years, it'll be very rudimentary. All clothing will be infrared. And people will ask, well, there was a time before that it wasn't infrared. So we're really striving to continue to build on the science and get the brands that we work with and the ones that we want to work with really carrying this message to the consumers.
I want to get, obviously it's Impact Talks, I want to go kind of from the beginning, learn everything about your story. But before I do, I had one question that I wanted to ask, because again, I have a shirt. And the thing that kind of popped up in my mind is, so I do martial arts and we have rash guards there. And you have these Under Armour shirts that are really tight, compression shirts. And I always notice those type of shirts are always super tight and almost glued to your body as a second skin. Whenever you have, like, you go surfing, you have a wetsuit, these things are like glued to your skin almost. But when I wear like these type of shirts from you guys, it seems to me like they're very baggy, and then I worried that the heat will kind of go away or something. And I'm looking at your shirt; it's also more baggy than those other shirts that I'm used to. Is there a reasoning for that? How come it's not like tied to your body? Am I missing something there?
No, it's a great question. And I think one of the ways we explain about our technology is that it's similar to the benefits that you would typically see with compression without compression. So compression works to reduce muscle vibration. It works by creating constriction around certain areas of muscles to help force circulation to that area. Our technology works with the body's own system. It doesn't need to be tight-fitting, and the heat from your body will travel through even multiple layers, and the minerals and the infrared generated back to the body is fine if it's close to the body. It doesn't have to be tight or even touching the body necessarily.
It literally sounds like a commercial, but I'm actually fascinated about the shirts because, again, like, I've never had it, and I looked everything up. The closest I got to this type of material was actual infrared in a vest or something that you need to charge, and then you can heat yourself up. So that was not a solution, obviously. So I would say one more question before I'd like to kind of hear how you built the company, and you have probably a lot of challenges that I'm hearing that could be fascinating for our audience, which is like client adoption, education, those type of stuff. Things I had to deal with in the beginning of my career as well. But again, so the shirt, okay, the compression part makes sense to me, but obviously when I'm wearing the shirt, I tend to be quite naive, and I think placebo would work very well on me. But what does the shirt actually do for somebody like me who just wears it like when I go to bed, or sometimes when I like bike or jog? Like what am I supposed to feel according to the science?
Sure, and that's another great question. And it really varies from user to user. I think to your point about the placebo effect, if you put something in somebody's head and then depending on how they interact with the product, they may feel that, or they may say, I don't feel that. We really try and be neutral. You don't necessarily notice your body's metabolic process and the cellular respiration rate, which is basically like the RPM of the cells. You're not going to notice the production of oxygen. It's not something you're going to sense, or the production of energy rather, the uptake of oxygen from the blood. And CELLIANT is based on science, and like all science, and it is something that is going to vary from person to person in terms of what they feel and how the technology interacts with their body. So for some people, they feel cooling, other people feel warming. When your circulation increases, it can be perceptible or not. The extremes are where you notice the biggest effect. So somebody that might be out in the cold extremes and they're getting frostbite, as the blood flow comes back into their fingers, there's going to be pain or tingling. That's something you're really going to feel. Whereas if you go from one moderate temperature to another, you may not notice a physiological response. So what's happening when you put on a shirt is that your body's respiration rate, that cellular activity where energy is being produced, it's enhanced and it's augmented. It now has another energy source. So we typically tend to think of our bodies being fed by the food we eat and the water we drink. We also make vitamin D from sunlight. And infrared, when you introduce an external infrared source, even if it's part of being powered from the body, it's still infrared emissions that the body wouldn't otherwise have. You're creating another energy for the body to use, which allows it to reallocate resources accordingly. We're constantly at 37°C or 98.6, and usually the ambient temperature around us is much cooler than that. So most of our body's energy resources are going to maintain that internal temperature. And if we augment that and support that system with additional resources, the body's going to benefit.
So pretty much you need less energy because you stay on temperature.
That's exactly right. You have more energy reserves, and we validated that through a cycling study where we saw VO2 production or VO2 consumption was reduced over a set distance. club cyclists.
So for instance, like me, I'll be training for an Ironman in the next couple of months, hopefully. So you're saying that if I be running or biking, having those shirts on while I'm doing it would be better for me than those biking shirts, or how?
That's exactly right. I mean, there are biking shirts that have CELLIANT in them, so that will
really?
that will give you the boost, and it also helps with recovery. Everything is really based on circulation. The minerals and the nutrients that our cells need are delivered through circulation, and the metabolic waste is removed through circulation. So when you're in recovery mode, if you can enhance circulation, that helps your muscles repair and restore faster. And if you're in performance mode, delivering more oxygen and more nutrients can help even augment or shift the body from going to aerobic to anaerobic. If you can delay that shift, you're going to be able to increase your endurance.
Okay, so two questions there. So the minerals, I'm thinking, oh, these are minerals, so at one point they'll be depleted. And then maybe a skeptical question, which is, if the body is emitting this infrared or this heat or whatever, isn't it like waste? Why are we reusing it? Is that like not, is that healthy, or, yeah?
So the second question first, the energy from our body that's being emitted into the environment is just a potential fuel source for whatever we can invent to harness and create something productive. So yes, right now, generally speaking, that energy goes into the environment and it just dissipates. So being able to harness that is just reusing or recycling the body's byproduct and creating a benefit for it.
And the first question then, the minerals, do they get depleted?
So the minerals in the material do not leach out, and they stay permanently embedded. And when I might have conflated I'm talking about the body's own, like when you eat vitamins, minerals that the body needs to sustain, those are delivered through circulation, separate from what we're talking about that's powering the shirt or the garment.
Okay, sorry. I had a lot of questions that were interesting for me, because obviously as I wear it, I just want to understand what is actually happening. So those are out of the way. And then obviously I started looking into your company. Again, very impressive that it's like almost 20 years. The fact that this got pulled off, the clients that you did, very creative, but also the growth that you had. We've had a conversation before this, of course. I like to go kind of back, because this company technically got started around the internet boom. Is that correct?
Yes.
So could you like go back to, how did you get to this idea? Why did you go for a company like this and not an internet company? Kind of shape your story from the beginning to like starting your company.
Sure. Thank you. Well, really, for me, it started with just a passion of learning and a curiosity about the body, about science. I have a degree in business administration, and so I had the foundation of how to run a company and work experience that would lead me to create and start up different companies. But having a vocation where you can actually help and create a health benefit was always intriguing to me. And the inventor and I had a mutual friendship, and as he explained to me what he was wanting to do, I felt intuitively and sort of an innate knowledge or understanding that this technology really works and that there is something really of value here. I wasn't really clear or aware or understood what the challenge would be on the science side to actually validate it. I thought that infrared was more widely accepted or understood. I think I made a pretty common mistake of assuming what my knowledge might be, other people might have as well. And there's just an incredible amount of skepticism in the beginning. But our passion and our shared vision, I think, really led us to stick with it. And infrared has been used for literally thousands of years. And the benefits and power of the sun and healing is something that has maybe been understood innately but not proven scientifically. And so really started in 2001. The company was founded in 2002. And we originally were just selling shirts and basically out of a garage. And we realized in order to grow this and really scale it, we would need partners. And rather than try and create a new brand, we wanted to figure out how to get existing brands to embed the technology into their products and leverage their reach and their power of marketing and ability to tell a story in a way that we wouldn't be able to. And so by 2005, we were really focusing on how to make the raw material. And there was, a bunch of challenges in that when you put a mineral into a textile, because they're designed extensively to remove contaminants and particles. And so we're asking to, what in their view is to add a contaminant into the system. So there's a lot of starts and stops in the beginning. And parallel to that, we were investing in the science so that we could get to a place where the medical community would understand and accept as fact the claims that we were wanting to make. And so the journey really has been pursuing improvement in the actual product itself and building the science out, and then through that attracting higher and more profile brand partners.
I like the stories, definitely the general lines. I think especially what I enjoy with the previous guests as well on this podcast is like the nitty gritty, the storytelling, and like when you were starting the business. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. I was in a garage. First of all, why T-shirts? Why a garage? Can you tell us like the beginning stories of that part?
Yeah, absolutely. It really was just a matter of what was available to us. There was some yarn that we had seen that was infrared emitting yarn that the inventor went to Japan to buy and start coming back. And the original application was to help his grandmother and to really help with arthritic shoulders and hip, and as the body sort of breaks down in old age, it's relatively easy to put a sleeve on your knee, or if you have tennis elbow, put a sleeve on your elbow, but bracing the shoulder, the hip area is much more difficult. And so the idea that if we had something that could cover that area, even if it was not tight or restrictive, but was generating some type of benefit without any side effects. So the shirt was sort of the first product that we thought could be helpful, and really didn't have like a store face, or it didn't really make sense to try and build a retail store at that point, especially like, as you say, the internet was just getting started. So it was really started in a garage and with some POs for some shirts. And then one of the main points of retail was actually a salon in Beverly Hills in California. And so the people coming in and looking for hair and taking care of beauty, it was sort of a natural extension that there might be clothing that could help promote their health and well-being as well. And then we started attending trade shows and handing out samples. And we had a few executives at some of the companies we wanted to work with that either had a knee problem or had some type of nagging injury. And when they had a personal experience with it, to see that they didn't need to take a leave every day for their achy knee, or their tennis elbow, which had been bothering them for months, all of a sudden the pain was gone. That led to people being more willing to try it and to put it into their companies. And that really was how we got our foot in the door.
So in the beginning, it was very much like lead generation, cold calling, trade shows. I noticed. How much business did you get from trade shows? Because from my experience, trade shows are not that good sometimes, and then one trade show might be like hitting it big. So how much business did you truly get from trade shows?
Well, for us in the beginning, all of our business really came from trade shows or from leads generated at those shows, because that was really the best way in the early 2000s. The Outdoor Retailer Show, which was then held in Salt Lake City, is where the brands would come together and usually place orders with retailers, but also look for innovation and new technologies that might be of interest to incorporate into products in further seasons. And that was really how we have a booth there and hand out sample products. We would have socks and wristbands made and have some demonstrations that people could interact that showed the body was an energy source, that had motors that could be run off of heat from the body, dynamometer, which measures grip strength. So you could put a wristband on and after 10 or 15 minutes see an improvement in grip strength. And that created some visual excitement and some ways for people to connect with the technology. It's challenging because infrared is beyond the visible spectrum, so it's not something that we see. But if you set up an infrared camera hooked up to a monitor, then people can come and see, and then they start to connect and understand what we're talking about.
Everything you're mentioning sounds extremely expensive for a startup that is just starting out. Can I ask, like, how much did a trade show like that cost? Was it worth it? Did you get your clients on that first trade show or something?
Well, we really had to partner with other supply chain partners in the beginning. So we would share part of a booth with a company that was already exhibiting. It was expensive. Even sharing a booth can run tens of thousands of dollars. We had an initial investment of a little over $1 million that gave us some runway and allowed us to get the first products made and to invest in those types of shows. And that really helped. I think without those relationships in the beginning, it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to get this off the ground.
You skipped that part of getting the investment, and can you share like the first time you got an investor in, like how was that process and how did it turn out?
Yes, we have been really for about 10 or 15 years in a perpetual state of fundraising and bootstrapping and trying to build the science from the sales of the company. And the reality is most investors want to see further proof than where we were at any given time. And so it was always come back after you've done this, or come back after you've built it to a certain size. And so in order to get the initial investments, it was really friends and family, and you're giving the best expectations, the best forecast that you can at the time. But inevitably things get delayed or don't turn out the way you thought. So it's been challenging. I think all of the early investors, including myself, really thought that this would have taken off much more quickly. So we've had to deal with tempered expectations and frustrated investors. But that's really just caused us to work that much harder.
I'm noticing you're going over it in general lines, but this is super valuable because I've invested in the last 2 years as well, and I had one startup return a very increment investment, and then another one in like a year and a half, a 50 to 70% boost because they just closed like a funding round. So could you kind of like elaborate about whatever you're allowed to share? Like, how long did it take in the beginning? Like, when did the first frustrated investors come, and like how did you deal with that? A lot of people probably listening can probably imagine what you're going through, and how. Yeah, can you elaborate on that story?
Absolutely, it's it is very personal when you're putting your money into the company and you think that based on the facts that you're given that there's going to be a certain outcome, and of course you understand that maybe it might work out a different way, but when you write that check and you put the money into the company, you're believing that the outcome that you're investing in is the one that's going to happen. And when that doesn't happen, it is extremely challenging. So my brother and I were the original investors that formed the company in 2002, along with the inventor. And we really thought that it would be a home run, and we sit on the board and show all of our friends this great investment we made. And as it wasn't really tracking, there was a point where it needed more money, and I felt that if I was going to put more money in, I really needed to have a hands-on operational role in the company. And so at that point, I made conditional additional investment on becoming the CEO of the company. And that was a struggle, and ultimately we found a different person to come in that was a neutral party. But when that didn't work out, I did eventually step in as CEO. That was in 2008. And then we did have some early successes, and we wanted to bring in more money. So in 2012, we brought in another investor who put $1 million in, and the brands that we thought were going to be signing up and expanding, never really materialized. And so that was just another challenge and another set of expectations that we didn't really meet. And so we really worked with that investor and made adjustments for them to increase their ownership so that they would feel that everything was done in good faith, because ultimately you want to have everyone believing in what you're doing and feel like they're all being treated equally. And so I think that it just requires a certain flexibility and a certain awareness that just because something today is a certain way, or even if you have a contract that says a certain thing, you need to be able to really work together to find a solution, because it doesn't help anybody if you can't come to an agreement that allows you to grow the company.
Super nice that you were pretty flexible in giving the investor more. You mentioned at one point you brought in a different CEO. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, why? We've probably all seen the Steve Jobs documentary, the video, the movie, where he gets replaced, and then Apple seems to go down like crazy, and then Steve Jobs comes back as a hero. So every time I'm thinking the founder gets replaced by a neutral CEO, things it's not going to be the same. Obviously, I may be biased by Hollywood here, but could you explain the process? Also maybe the emotional process of you accepting that you're not good enough at that point in time and stepping down, or was it that process, or were you kicked out, or how did it work? And then also the process of how you came back and started doing better than the other one.
Yeah, so this was 2005, and I had invested this additional money and became the CEO, the acting CEO. And through that process, the more that I uncovered about what had been going on prior, the more disturbing it was. And it was clear that in order for the company to survive, if we had a neutral party, we would be in a much better shape. So it wasn't so much that I was kicked out or didn't feel I could do the job, but it was really based on what's in the best interest of the company and how do we get to a successful resolution. And so there was a common ground that we could find in appointing a new CEO and trying to keep all the fractions in agreement. And that allowed us to sort of keep the company moving for the next few years. And then really that person wasn't working out, and it just became clear that we needed a new direction. And it was very questionable if the company was going to actually be able to survive. And so my brother and I had a meeting towards the end of 2008, and it became clear that we might lose our investment. And so we felt that if that was really going to happen, one of us should be, steering the ship as it sinks into the ocean. And so I felt that I would, take that on and really do everything in my power to make sure that every resource, every last option had been exhausted, and at least have a feeling of satisfaction if it didn't work out, that we had done all that we could. And so I stepped back in as CEO, I think officially in January of 2009, and we were able to cobble together some business and some accounts. We made really just incremental loans, $25,000 loans to the company every few months, just to see what was the minimum needed to keep it going, to reevaluate if there was something here. And then our fortunes really started to change towards the end of that year, and we really started to grow. And that was kind of that part of the company history and what happened there.
That's quite a turnaround then, from because I wasn't aware that it was that close, but then you came back and obviously much stronger now. Because how big is Hologenix? How many people?
So we're 16 full-time people, and we've now done about $250 million in retail sales. If you look at all of the partners and the products they've sold in the marketplace, that's about the retail value. So that's kind of how I measure it, because it is something that has far reach and is growing, but we're a small team relatively.
That's impressive. Okay, so then super valuable question here for maybe people like me then. You have that conversation with your brother. Obviously, your investment's about to go down. You're like, no, I have to do this. I have to put everything in it to make sure that I've done everything I can. You enter January 1st, 2009. What do you even do? What are your first steps when you see a sinking ship like that?
Well, it brings us back to the trade show. So I had some business cards made, and I went to the January outdoor retail show in Salt Lake and started meeting with some brands that we thought there might be an opportunity with to work with. And we were able to get a few POs and just start generating revenue and building on each little piece of momentum that we could generate.
So you were very focused on sales, pretty much.
It was sales. It was it was really a company of one employee. We had a part-time bookkeeper, and it was me, and just had to generate revenue and find brands that could give us orders so that we could go and make more products. And then how do we finance the making of that product was through these micro loans, and it was very much sort of hand to mouth.
So I've had the product in my hand, so I kind of understand why and that it was worth it. But how come it was worth it to you? Why not just cut your losses?
I've had that conversation with myself literally dozens of times, and there is an evaluation of doubt that I think we all go through, and how we weigh different factors, I guess, is a unique process for everyone. For me, I felt like it was usually a challenge of, can I work harder versus I should be doing something else? And I knew fundamentally that technology worked. I'd seen the benefits of people firsthand, and on animals where there is no placebo effect. So I really felt a passion for what I was doing, even if all of the warning signs were going off and there were maybe somebody else would throw up their hands and say, what are you doing, and you should be doing something else. I really was just driven by a belief in what I was doing.
And then maybe a more practical question. In order to pull something like this off, you have to be great at sales. Like, you can't just go on trade shows and kind of be bad at sales. So So what is it that you actually like? How do you do sales? What's your philosophy on sales? And especially in those times, that trade show that you went to, were you doing certain strategies or yeah, what did you do?
Well, I think for us it was foundational was how do we create a tactile experience with the technology? How do we show people what we're doing? It's this invisible technology that you may or may not feel, and it sounds like science fiction. So we had some pretty steep obstacles. And for me, I think the conviction that I have comes through. I think the openness that the industry has to new technologies and wanting to move the bar in terms of innovation helps, because people are looking for things. It is hard because there's all kinds of claims being made with all different levels of documentation or support. But for me, the focus was really lifting up the brand partners and creating an advantage for them that sets them apart from their peers and gives them a chance to expand market share and to also increase their sales price and really add a value that's tangible and that the consumer wants. I think part of the challenge there is that if the consumer doesn't know about a product, how can they want it? And so it's not like you have people lining up asking for infrared clothing. And so, that was a real challenge in the beginning as well, and demonstrating that once people are educated and understand this potential, that's something that they would want.
At trade shows, you already explained how you would educate people about this technology, but doing $250 million in sales at retail value, like how do you educate the mass about this technology? Obviously, you have partners. I'm assuming they do that, but how did you go about educating people?
Yeah, and that process is ongoing, right? And we're constantly trying to understand the best way to impact the consumer awareness, the drive, the demand. We really focused on having some type of visual demonstration, having an infrared camera, having the dynamometer where people can test themselves and measure their improvement in grip strength, trying to make it interactive, having propellers powered by the heat from your arm, having like a copper wall that you could put your hands on and create electricity. So really just trying to make it interactive and trying to give out as much product as possible. When people wear a product and they experience, socks are a great example. People's feet swell, they sweat, they smell. And our socks really help reduce swelling, eliminate odor, moisture. If there's no moisture, there can't be bacteria or odor. It's at least reduced. So giving out socks at trade shows where people are standing 8, 10, 12 hours a day and their feet are sore, and then coming back the next day and saying, wow, my feet felt much better. Just looking to how we can create positive experiences and then relying on those people to tell their friends about it and drive adoption and awareness. But it's something that, it's a journey without a destination.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sales focused. It seems like obviously you have a sales background and experience doing this 20 years and then stuff you did before as well. But I'm noticing a lot of word of mouth, sales, trade shows, all that stuff. How about marketing? Have you looked into doing specific commercials? How are you handling the storytelling behind that? How are you handling the marketing if you have to educate people about your product?
And that really is where we depend on the brand. So a brand like Under Armour to go out and leverage their marketing power and their athletes and have them speak to the benefits and create awareness, training the staff at stores, giving them hands-on tactile experience with the product, so when people come in, they can talk about the product and speak about it in a way that simplifies it and makes it digestible. And really, we invest a huge percentage of our budget, 10, 15, some years even 20% of our budget on marketing, but it's not going to really make a dent or an impact in generating consumer awareness without the help of the brand partners. So we typically tend to focus on the B2B interaction and where people that are making key decisions for their brands, where they might be getting information or knowledge or research. and then leveraging those brand partners to take that story to the next level to the consumer.
Okay, so then maybe a question that will relate because people know the brand. How did you get Under Armour to sign up with you and convince them to do all your marketing for you?
Yeah, that was really a journey. I first met with them in 2010, 2011. They were very interested in the science, and almost, people want to believe that this can work, but they also need to make sure that the science is there, especially a brand like Under Armour, where people are, have a target on their back, right? And so it wasn't until 2018 that we really had signed them. So it was, an 8-year process of building our science. When they first reviewed our technology, they felt our science needed more work and more studies, and so we continued to do that. And then in 2017, the FDA determined that we were a medical device and a general wellness product, and I think that really helped establish the credibility of the science. Even though the FDA, the legalese is that they didn't technically make a determination about the benefit, having their determination that it's a medical device and a general wellness product, and having them review our claim set and tell us that our wellness claims were appropriate for the product really shifted the burden from the brands, because the roadblock we would usually hit would be with legal. So you'd have the marketing, the innovation, the product teams all on board, and then when it went to the legal team, there wasn't much incentive to clear our claim set. It just exposed them to liability. So by working with the FDA and by going through that process, we were able to kind of shift that burden from the in-house counsel of these brands to say, okay, they've gone through the FDA, they have a determination as a medical device and general wellness product, have 9 published studies, and that's, I think, a key turning point in our history to bring these large brands on into adoption.
But so pretty much once the FDA approval came and Under Armour signed up, I mean, at this point, it's just a rocket ship up.
Yes, and I have to say, we can't say FDA approval. It's not, that's saved for medications. But yes, I think having that substantiation and everything else that you just said, I think is really accurate.
So pretty much it was a 20-year battle or 17-year battle to just get on the radar of the FDA, and then from there on, because obviously the issue then isn't sales, it was legal. Legal was the thing that was holding you back, and thanks to the FDA, that obstacle is cleared. Just out of interest, we have some. I know for a fact we've had biomedical speakers on and stuff like that, bioengineering as well. So how long does that process take if you go to the FDA and you want something like that? Like, what are we talking? Months, weeks, years? What are we talking?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And it's really been interesting. And for everyone, I'm sure the journey's slightly different. When we were talking about me stepping back in as CEO at the end of 2008, 2009, one of the reasons, the impetus, the triggers for that was that the current CEO at the time, we had been asking him to engage in the FDA and start that process. And his response was, well, it's just going to take so long and it's going to take so many years. And so, our thought was, well, then the sooner we start it, the better. And so our original filing in 2009 with the FDA was to seek clarification about how they would treat our product and what they felt would be the right avenue. And it really gets into kind of the minutia, but generally speaking, for a non-significant risk product like ours, you would look for a predicate. So let's talk about an electric blanket. An electric blanket is a medical device and it has a 510K. And if you wanted to make your own electric blanket, you would say that it's substantially equivalent to the original one, and you could get a 510K clearance in a matter of a few months.
What's a 510K? What is that?
It's a way of receiving, it's a vehicle for receiving clearance for a product that is already in the marketplace, but you're making a new version. So the general rule of thought is that most products have a medical claim would already have a predicate, a pre-existing product that you could use to say that your product is similar, and that's the 510K process. If you don't have a predicate, you have to file what's called a de novo. And so the FDA told us that there is no predicate for your technology, for your products. We tried to originally argue that an infrared lamp or an infrared sauna was substantially equivalent to our clothing. And they said no, because the mechanism of action, the power source is different. It's not being powered by a battery or an outlet. It's being powered by the human body or by ambient heat. And so we had to file a de novo, which we did. But that de novo was ultimately denied, and we had to kind of start over with them. And the FDA, their position on infrared and what we did also evolved. And so in 2016, we submitted our second 513G, which is a request for information. It basically is asking the FDA to classify your product for you. And that's used to get guidance on how the FDA would view your product and then what steps you would take from there. And so when we submitted that 513G in 2016 and got the response in June of 2017, it came back that we were a medical device, we were a general wellness product. The definition of a medical device is something that alters the physiological characteristics of the body. And so increasing circulation is by definition a physiological change. And so we fell directly as a medical device. At the same time, given the low risk nature of the product and the lack of any side effects or any kind of harm that could come from using it, they chose not to regulate us, not to require any additional registration, and we're free to market to healthy people. And so as we want to market to someone with diabetes or Raynaud's or has some kind of circulation impairment, that's a separate application, and we're working on a diabetic study now that when that's complete, we'll submit a second de novo to get medical clearance for those applications. But right now, the FDA has confirmed that we're able to market to healthy people.
But so you are very much exploring these other avenues so that you could also market to specific sick people.
That's correct. And for me, that going back to why I've been at this so long and what really led me to invest so much of my time and life in this is that population. Diabetes is the #1 disease in the world. People that have type 2 diabetes are at risk of losing an extremity, their toe, their foot below, their leg below the knee. And the tissue is just not getting enough circulation and blood flow. And so if we can raise that threshold to make the tissue viable, that's just an amazing opportunity for us to impact the world in a positive way.
I like that. But man, 1.5 years just to get a normal response from an FDA person, pretty much.
It was very challenging. Yes, it was not the normal timeline that you would expect. Normally, a 513G, you get a response within 60 to 90 days. And so, that was after already engaging with them for 6 years. So it was really a Herculean task to navigate that agency, and we have, as a result, really good relationships with the people there. We understood that the process was really designed to just vet us and make our science stronger and really clarify the mechanism of how our product's working. And we did a lot more substantiation over that time. So we look at it overall as a positive. It was just maybe more lengthy than it needed to be.
I mean, it's a positive because you kept at it. You could have literally just given up in 2010 or something. So at the same time, so now technically, How is it with the FDA? I can imagine many startups scaling to the US might have this question. You've been dealing with the FDA now more than 10 years. Do you have somebody's phone number at this point, or is it still the same drag?
We do have phone numbers. We try not to ever abuse those. The one advice I will say that I learned is don't start with a lawyer. No disrespect to all the wonderful lawyers out there, but the FDA is scientists and doctors. And I was looking at it as a bureaucracy or a government agency and needed a lawyer to interact with them. So our first foray was with a lawyer, but that requires the FDA to then bring lawyers on from their side to sort of monitor everything they're saying, and it just creates a lot of unnecessary slowing of the whole process. So once we switch to a consultant, and then you're having scientists talk to scientists, it becomes a lot more streamlined. So I think that's really critical. And overall, there are really a lot of good people that work at the FDA that are trying to help advancement, but it's also designed to protect people and to make sure that no harm is coming, or no products that could cause any harm, and also to make sure that the products work so as intended. So I was frustrated a lot through that process. I'd be lying if I said otherwise, but at the same time, I have a lot of appreciation for the tasks that they have and the work that they have to do. And I think we ended up in a really good place. And to your point, if we send an email to the FDA, we get a response back in 24 to 48 hours.
Nice. Finally. Have you ever explored into going to Europe with this, or is this very much something that you're letting the brands handle?
So we are really global. We have a global footprint, and I think if you go outside of North America, you see infrared is really a lot more ubiquitous. Japan, Korea, China, Europe, I think definitely has a greater awareness than in North America. We actually have liaison offices in Germany, in Japan, Taiwan, Australia, and we have global brands now. In Germany, we just launched a sleepwear collection with and MEY, and so that was October of last year. And there are obviously Under Armour is in Europe, but we see a lot of opportunity internationally. So
what are kind of challenges you're facing nowadays? How's it been different since 2018? How are you reflecting about that part of the company's history, and where are you going?
I think for us, a lot of the challenges over the last 2 years are supply chain related. And you see some of the disruption that the pandemic has had, and you're really at the mercy of things beyond your control, which is always a scary situation to be in, where you can't plan or prepare for something, and you really have wild fluctuations in lead times. Something that might have been 30 days can be 6 to 9 months, or they might say we can't give you a time and it's just unknown. And then in addition to that, just the process of adding CELLIANT minerals, it's very hard to make that a consistent, defined process. The minerals tend to agglomerate and you get clumping. So we're constantly trying to improve the production yield and the efficiency and eliminate or reduce waste. And that's something that is really a moving target. You have a few runs that are great, and then you have a few that are not so great, and then maybe one that's terrible, and you can't really identify why you're having these fluctuations, even though the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, and the process remains the same. The minerals are the same, they're mixed the same. So that can cause a lot of hair pulling. And I think we've done what we can to mitigate the uncertainty in transportation by pre-positioning our raw materials around the globe so that they're at the floor of the factory when they're ready to be used. They don't have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a ship to bring them to them. Air freight is sort of out of the question in our industry. It's kind of a non-starter. So everything has to really be moved by ships.
Why is air freight not possible?
Because of the cost. It just impacts the cost to such a degree that the margins, in the manufacturing world are so small that it just will turn something into a loss just by that alone.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think one of the positives that's happened is that there's a focus on health and wellness, and people now really are starting to see that it's possible to integrate those types of benefits into textiles. And even after the FDA, we had people say to us, well, what's the value in improving circulation? Why is that important? Or and now with COVID, we're not getting those questions as much. People understand that the circulation system of the body is critical to the immunity system, the immune system, and supporting a foundation of strong health in the body. And so that's really, I think, helped spread people's willingness to engage with us and to look at integrating CELLIANT into their products. So we see, silver lining in this, and really want to continue to expand that awareness and use this situation as positively as possible.
Maybe another question that I have, because as I'm listening here to your story, I'm thinking what you guys have created is really kind of, you're harnessing the body's energy. Have you ever explored other products to harness the body's energy in different ways? I'm thinking out loud, of course, but I don't know if this is real, but maybe charging a battery or something that you can use to charge your iPhone. Because you said 100 watts, so I'm assuming 100 watts per hour. That means you could charge your iPhone indefinitely for free.
Yeah, and it's 100 watts per second continually. So, but that's if you could capture all of the energy coming off the entire body at once. And yes, I think you'll see, there are a lot of innovative ways now to harness kinetic energy, which is like the friction of moving. So piezoelectric plates, flashlights that if you shake, you can create a light. Looking at ways where your cell phone's in your pocket and it charges as you walk. Those types of ideas I think are really fascinating. Embedding sort of flexible circuitry into clothing to help with cooling or heating. We're really focused on how to really that's something that I think is for there's opportunities where those will intersect with us, but right now it's really important that people understand that our technology works. I would say that there's still so many people that are questioning what we do that we need to really focus on clearly and convincingly showing the medical community that our product does what we say it does before we start looking at other types of solutions or applications.
So it almost sounds to me like because of the skeptics, you guys are moving slower, whereas if there were no skeptics and just like everything would have happened 10 years ago, you would have probably been putting out like battery chargers T-shirts or something.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that we're really continuing to further the science of our existing technology and what that does. We have looked and we have worked with some thought leaders and some forward thinkers in this space about how to integrate circuitry into the clothing, and I think that there are other companies looking at doing that now as well. Again, that takes a huge amount of capital and investment, so we're probably a little constrained in, frankly, what we could do in that area. But we are, I think, more not more interested, but it'll be easier to carry to other applications. So infrared in agriculture, for example, and seeing how infrared affects plant growth is a natural progression for us. Looking at how infrared can impact beauty and wellness. is another area that we're looking to expand into, and those are a little easier for us to step out into versus investing in a totally new technology.
Yeah, it makes sense, and seems like also probably a much smarter business with bigger margins if you go to agri-tech and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ability to reduce water consumption for a plant or increase plant yield, or the brick factor, the taste of strawberries. Why do you eat a strawberry? Sometimes it tastes great, other times it tastes bland. That's like a measurement of the bricks. And all of those can be positively impacted by integrating infrared into the growth of the plant.
Where does one go to buy all the gear? Let's say I'm training for the Ironman, but somebody listening here, we've had a couple of ultra endurance athletes on the podcast as well, and they're convinced they want to buy the bike shirt. I didn't know you guys had bike shirts and stuff like that, but they want to buy like a whole outfit and walk around with it the whole day. Where do they go?
Well, Under Armour is great for a lot of the exercise enthusiasts, endurance athletes. I think their website, if you keyword CELLIANT, has over 200 hits. Obviously, Amazon has a lot of products. And just searching CELLIANT under shopping will return a lot of results. The cycling is Chimera. They're based out of the UK. And that's a great solution for that type of product. And there are a lot of bedding companies as well doing sheets and beds. Bear Mattress in the United States is one of our strongest customers in that space, and make a great product for those of you looking for a new bed.
Is there a list of all these products on your website? Because this is the first time I'm hearing that there are mattresses.
We have it's challenging to try and hyperlink to external sites because they're constantly changing their listings. So we do have a lot of the logos of our brand partners featured on our website, and then from there people can keyword search what type of product they're looking for. But probably the easiest is just typing in CELLIANT and searching products.
Makes sense. We're kind of nearing to the end. I would like to first of all ask a question. Is there anything that you'd like to share that we didn't cover?
No, thank you for asking that. I think really it's been a pleasure being able to share a part of this journey with you. And really what I'd like to just leave with is we're amplifying human energy, and we're harnessing the potential of the human body. And that's something that has, I think, fascinated a lot of people, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. And we're a small part of that story. And being able to come on your show and share that journey is, we're very grateful for that. So thank you.
For sure. I'd like to roll out the red carpet for you. Is there anything you'd like to share? Any place, anything you want to sell or whatever? Where can people find things? And please share everything.
Well, we just encourage people to follow us, social channels, LinkedIn, CELLIANT, hashtag CELLIANT. Send us any kind of questions. We love hearing from people that are curious about the technology or interested in using it, and really continue to follow our science. And we'll be publishing more papers and building out the library of data that shows what we do. And I think that's really it.
Great. Then thank you so much for coming, and maybe we'll see you on a different episode as well.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me.
If you liked this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group, where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business question